Hi, welcome to our 14.3, which is session plan, session and program reviews. So this is a review on my on my session that I carried out with my client, which was recorded. So as we get started, this is my client's aims. So the program aims. So this is what I aim to do in the program. Was doing the 6-week program was to improve my client's athleticism, overall cardiovascular endurance and fitness. Using HIIT training, and HIIT training was used in this session, this specific session, but it wasn't used it wasn't used for every session over the whole 6-week program. So specific session aims. The specific aims for the session I'll carry out with the client will focus on the aerobic capacity and athletic improvement of the client, and this is using HIIT training in the specific session aims. So, and then below I've got how are these aims specific to client aims and how will they be measured to check for success. So I said this is specific to my client's goals. As they stated, they wanted to improve their athleticism and fitness, as we stated before. And also in the session we'll be carrying out HIIT training, meaning that they'll be working on aerobic capacity and high intensity movements that will help their athleticism. So obviously, their aims, the client's aims have been linked to the session aims, and they share. The session is going to improve, is going to justify the client's goals. So everything that's been used will help them achieve their goal. Moving on to the risk assessment. So as we see, we've got hazards on the left side. So incorrect footwear, wet floor, no warm up, equipment left out, jewellery, and equipment in use. So all of these have an effect on the participant and possibly people around the participant. And then the controls to be in place. So for incorrect footwear, check for the correct footwear. So this before the session starts, got to make sure the client's got appropriate footwear. Otherwise, it can cause an injury to occur. If the shoe doesn't have ankle support or anything like that, we're going to be carrying out high intensity training, so they're going to need to do movements in many directions. So if they don't have any support, then you could easily twist an ankle, which can be quite serious in some cases. So wet floor, got to check for correct footwear with suitable grip if the floor is quite slippery. And also check the floor for any wet patches that need to be cleaned. Obviously, if there's a wet patch, you need to dry it up before the participant starts so they don't slip over and hurt, injure themselves. Incorrect warm up or not an effective warm up. So if they don't warm up appropriately, it can mean their muscles are tight and cold. And when they actually do the exercise, because it's high intensity, they'll try and do a high intensity movement, and it will put a strain on the muscle when it's not ready to be strained. It's not warm and pliable, so it can rip and tear. So with the equipment left out, I'll just demonstrate how to put it away at the end. I'll tell them how to put it away, so that it avoids any problems. There's going to be things like weights, stuff like cones and stuff that might slip over, and it's not going to be a serious injury that can occur, but it's still a risk. Jewelry, if they I don't know, it can get caught in clothing, can get ripped out, and this is obviously a more severe injury if an earring gets ripped out of your ear. Can be quite painful for the participant, so removing jewellery before a session is quite important. Equipment in use, just demonstrating how to use the equipment to the client so they don't actually injure themselves when they're using equipment. But my session doesn't include any equipment, so this is not really relevant. So my client PAR-Q is just where I ask them a couple of questions if they've got any of the diseases or conditions on their left, and then a few questions on the right. So ask them if they've got bronchitis, heart problems, chest pains, diabetes, high blood pressure, epilepsy, any other medical condition that hasn't been mentioned, and then if they have a medical history. And then, are you aware of any of the symptoms? Are you aware of the symptoms of these medical conditions? Are you aware you may have a disease or condition? Have you been tested for any conditions or diseases? Is the client vulnerable to certain diseases because of their lifestyle? And are you aware of the symptoms of the medical conditions listed? This is important to basically renew your knowledge of how they've been since the last time you've seen them. So if they've had any injuries since the last time you've met, you have to factor this into your session. You might have to change a few things around if they have had an injury. So this is important to ask them again, just to make sure that they're 100% healthy for the session. These are like the averages that I want my client to be working at. So resting heart rate 59 beats per minute, and then we've got the averages on the bottom, and what I want my client to be performing at the top, and what my client's values are. So 59 beats per minute was his resting heart rate, and then his target heart rate zone was 182 BPM during the session. Resting blood pressure 134/71, so it's all healthy. Well, it's all relatively healthy. 600 for the peak flow test, and the BMI was 21.74%. So moving on to my content one. So this is just the risk assessment, emergency procedures, health and safety considerations, and resource needs, and also facility needs. So as we see, the location is in the indoor sports hall. Facility needs is all I needed was a 6-foot sports hall for a client to perform their exercises. Resource needs, stopwatch. Health and safety considerations. Before starting the session, I'll make sure the client has taken off any jewellery such as piercing, watches, bracelets and chains. I'll also check that they are in appropriate clothing, as if they do not have clothing it can cause injury. Do not have a correct clothing, it can cause injury. That's stuff like incorrect footwear. They can slip, they can twist an ankle if it's not supporting them properly, or it doesn't have enough grip. Clothing such as if they wear jeans, it can restrict their movement. They won't be able to perform the session properly. So they need to be in clothing where it's suitable for the exercise. So emergency procedures and contingency plan. So if my client sustained an injury, I would immediately inform the teacher overseeing the session or instructor. Then we would get a medical kit if the injury was serious, and quickly evaluate the injury, and then call an ambulance if it is needed, if it is severe enough. If there is a fire alarm, I'll direct the client to the nearest fire exit, and we will wait at the assembly point. If there is less space than expected when coming to the sports hall to carry out my session, I can still carry out all the same exercises before because they require minimal space. So that's quite good, because my exercises are quite adaptable. So issues arising from the risk assessment. So inappropriate footwear can cause risks to arise during the session, as the nature of the exercise is being carried out at high intensity, and therefore means that if footwear is not supportive, it can cause an injury. For example, if the client performed a lateral lunge and their shoe did not have enough ankle support, it could mean the client twists an ankle and has an injury. Alright, so moving on to my warm-up. So the first bit is the introduction. So this is what I'll say when I meet my client. What will I check, and how will I behave? So I'll greet my client and have a chat before starting the session. The session's warm-up, where I'll explain what the exercise will entail. I will also ask the client if they've suffered any injuries or illnesses since the last time I spoke to them, to make sure that they are able to participate in the session. And I'll explain to them that we'll be carrying out HIIT training, and that it will help achieve their goal of improved athleticism and aerobic capacity or fitness. I will also let them know that if they want to stop at any time, they can due to the high intensity of the session. I will then check their clothing. I will check mainly if they have clothes that allow a range of movement in the body, so they are not restricted in the session. Next, I will check their footwear, as if they do not have supportive footwear, it can mean an injury could occur. After checking they have the correct clothing, I will also check for jewellery before starting the warm-up. So this is the warm-up. To warm up, I'll get the client to follow me jogging while doing different exercises. They'll follow my lead as I example a range of different stretches they can easily follow. These will include high knees, bum kicks, sweeps, lunges, quad pulls, hips, squats. I will then get them to jog to a specific spot and then sprint back. If there is not enough space, then I'll end the warm-up on the previous stretch. These are some pictures of me showing the client how to stretch. So as we can see, he's copying me. We're just doing a few dynamic stretches before the session starts. So moving on to the main content. This is just the drills and what I'm going to be doing in the main content of the session. So after the warm-up is finished, I'll take the client into the main portion of the session. This session will involve HIIT training, which is high-intensity interval training, which will increase the client's explosive strength, and aerobic endurance, which is one of my clients' main goals. So they want to improve their athletic movements for basketball. Before the session starts, I'll explain this to my client. The main session will then start. The warm-up should have raised the client's heart rate and warm their muscles so they are pliable for high-intensity training. It is important that the muscles are warm because it means a reduced risk of injury, muscle tears. The exercises used in the session will be reverse lunge with knee up, squat thrusters, burpees with tuck jump, alternating lunge jumps, frog squat jump, Russian twist, and Superman with lateral raises. These will all be carried out for 1 minute, where the client will perform as many reps as possible. He will then have a 30-second rest in between, where I will demonstrate the next exercise. These exercises are being done because it is specific to my client's goals, and he wants to improve his aerobic capacity and also his athletic prowess. Completing HIIT training will cause adaptations to occur in the body where he is gaining strength and power. And these are some pictures of me explaining and encouraging him as he's carrying out the exercise that I've showed him. So as you can see, I've got the stopwatch in my hand. I'm basically just encouraging him to carry on because it's quite a hard thing to carry on if no one's saying anything. Alright, this is the cool down and plenary of my session. So during the cool down, I'll explain to the client that the cool down is an important part of the training session, as if they do not cool down, it can cause problems later after the session. These problems include a build-up of lactic acid remaining in the muscles post-exercise, and therefore causing muscle soreness. To reduce the risk of muscle soreness, the cool down needs to be carried out. I will ask the client to take their shoes off and walk on the toes and balls of their feet back and forth, and then I will perform some stretches on the floor and then finally against the wall. These will include toe touches, groin stretch, quad stretch, hamstring stretch, and then against the wall, we'll stretch the calf and hamstring. After completing this cool down, I'll talk to the client, asking how they found the session and if they felt like it pushed them, and how they found the session on their body. For example, how their legs feel in terms of muscle soreness or pain. I'll give them feedback saying what they can improve and something positive that they have done. Okay, so ending the session. There was no equipment used in the session, so there'll be nothing to clear up afterwards, and therefore when the session ends, the client can leave straight away if they want to. And these are some pictures of me. There's me on the floor with the client, showing him how to stretch, like showing him which stretches to do, and then up against the wall I was showing him also what stretches to do, and basically just guiding him. Right, so the client's feedback. They said the session was well planned, the warm-up and cool-down were run quickly and warmed up correct muscles for the warm-up. He said that it was a hard session, the session was high intensity, and they said they had to work hard to complete it. They also said motivating the client and pushing him to finish the exercise. This is what I was doing. Many times they were about to stop, and they kept going due to the encouragement and positive reinforcement afterwards. So the targeted muscle groups used in the warm-up and cool-down that we use in the main session, this is important, as if the wrong muscles were warm, when the other muscles get used in the session, it could mean an injury to the muscle, like a tear or a rip. So peer observer feedback. Observer said that the warm-up was good, was a good pulse raiser and stretched all the body parts so they were warm for the exercise. The observer said that the session had good exercise and had a good level of intensity, but said that I should have had a lower intensity at the start of the session and built it up as the session progressed. They said that the rest time given was well timed between the exercises, and that I demonstrated clearly what I wanted the client to do. They mentioned I relied on my piece of paper too much, which contained a list of my exercises. They said that the session would have been ran more smoothly if I learned everything off by heart. So these are the strengths and areas from developing regarding to me leading my session. So